Hi, gals. I love you both very much. I just found out I was pregnant this morning, which, yeah, I figured would be interesting to call in because I doubt you have any others like this. And if you do, Godspeed. My partner and I are like super in love. We both want kids. We both want to get married in the future. We're both working the shittiest jobs ever and are super in debt. I panic scheduled the abortion this morning for like a week from now. And now I have a week to sit here with all of those thoughts in my mind, knowing that eventually we do want this, but that it's happening now and I have no idea what to do. Ethically so torn across all the things. I figured it'd be way more fun for you guys to tear me apart than myself. Yeah, I'll probably just kill myself instead. So I love you both. Merry Christmas. Bye.
I was having such a good time.
You got to keep the baby.
Now mood is over.
Sorry.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Time
is of the essence.
I can't tell anyone
She's
to
got
keep
it on
the baby,
that.
but my hunch is you should keep the baby.
You got to keep the baby.
And it's a great blessing, and if you will regret it if you don't.
Especially if you're with someone that you are in love with and want to have a baby with.
Yeah, and I just want to say that having a baby is a lot cheaper than you think it will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's very manageable. It's very doable on a low budget. I mean, it's a very pick your own adventure. If you want to get the most expensive clothes and toys and crap, you can.
Or you can't because you're poor.
No, but should you be in that position, you could really knock yourself out, but you don't have to. All babies need is love and some calories.
I mean, people, I got into it with, after your free press debate with that guy, Ben Burgis.
That episode that's from, somebody had DM'd me to tell me that it was in there. And at the time it was paywalled. I haven't actually listened much to Red Scare in years. Dasha, so the two hosts are Anna and Dasha. And Dasha, who's the person who was talking about this conversation that she had with me, was actually years and years ago when she was much more left wing, was a guest on this show. And so when we ran into each other a few months ago and had this conversation that she's talking about, it was friendly, hey, Ben, but much more political disagreement now. So that is what that's about. And what to think about how to frame this. So, I probably wouldn't have said anything about it since if I have a conversation with somebody in real life, I always kind of, common sense exceptions notwithstanding, right? I generally assume that that's private. But it was mentioned on Red Scare. We can talk about it here. So we are going to play the sort of subsequent discussion on Red Scare of this argument that I had with Dasha. But first, I want to give you some larger context for how it came up in the first place. The event where we saw each other, because this is going to help sort of make sense of what this conversation was about. And by the way, if you don't, if the opening thing was confusing, I think it's once a year, twice a year. They do this thing on the Red Scare podcast. They'll call it a love line episode where people will call in with their relationship problems and things like that. And they'll, sometimes answer them. I think sometimes lightly make fun of them, whatever, you've listened to the radio, how stuff like this works. In any case, so the context of seeing Dasha was this event in LA back in September. It was this debate that happened at the Ace Theater. And rather than me describing it, since this is kind of a convoluted, the sort of lineup of people is sort of very strange and whatever. I think it's better to just show you. We put together a little montage here. So the first part is the little video that they actually played at the event to set it up, and that's in the organizer's video of the beginning of the debate. And then we sort of mash that together with Barry Weiss, who's the moderator, introducing the debaters. And all I'll say about it in advance is it was kind of refreshing to go to an event like this just as like an audience member. Because usually if there's a bizarre sort of constellation of people on a stage and debate, I'm there, I actually have to like argue with them. And in this case, it was just kind of relaxing. I could just, sit back and enjoy the show. Probably as you'll kind of get a sense of, not an overwhelmingly left-wing crowd or anything. I was there with Big Waz, who used to come out for Sopranos episodes, and Anna Khachiyan, and we didn't come together or anything, but Amber Frost from Chapo was there also, right? So there were a few members of the left media who were sort of scattered around going to this thing. But as far as who's actually on stage, again, I will just let the video set that up.
Ours is a rich and variant land. We have bounties beyond those known to the people of any other day. And as responsible as anyone else for the care of these bounties is the woman in the American home.
What we are talking about is a revolution.
50 years ago, the sexual revolution changed what it meant to be a woman.
For the first time, we will have true human sexual liberation.
Then it went on to change the world.
The women in this country will secure equality.
When you make laws apply equally to men and women, you end up taking away many of the rights that women now have.
I really don't know what women are asking for.
Whatever it is they're asking for, honey, it's not for you.
I've heard a lot of young men saying my household's sort of upset since Germaine Greer came.
Oh, I wish that was true.
Pornography has never been shown to hurt women any more than it hurts men or children.
That is wrong. There's only 2 occupations in this country in which women get paid more than men. One is modeling and the other is prostitution.
My working relationship became even more strained when Judge Thomas began to use work situations to discuss sex.
I feel like I can't make a move with someone beating down on me saying, you're being too sexy.
I vigorously support the Violence Against Women Act.
The Defense Secretary has lifted the ban on women serving in combat.
We are strong, we are brave, and we will fight. Pussies grab back.
Good girls live in an illusion. Bad girls aren't afraid of confusion.
The movement promised women political power, economic equality, and sexual freedom. But for all the gains, what have we lost? For all the freedoms we've found, are there one too many unintended consequences?
I make $250K a month.
Now that we can sleep with whoever we want, why are we having so little sex?
What is an incel?
And if we're so liberated, why are we so unhappy? As we became the men we thought we'd marry, what actually happened to men?
It's better than happiness, but it's almost unbearable.
And what comes next?
They just want to see me prance around in my cleavage.
Let me finish my point, and then we can argue against it.
These are the questions we think are worth asking out loud and in public.
You don't own me.
The tension between freedom and feminism.
Women are equal to men.
Then be equal. Do 50% of the hard job.
This feminism that we see, the way that it's practiced, it's like this bubblegum feminism.
We're in this giant hiccup into a different part of civilization that is extremely unprecedented.
Sex and sovereignty.
People used to believe that sex was sacred, was special.
Feminists have this idea that if we acknowledge that we're different, we're acknowledging that we're unequal.
Biology and ideology.
There's nothing wrong with porn. I'm calling for an end to the sex war in feminism.
Urgent questions that have captured generations before us.
I was asking myself, is this success?
and that we still grapple with today.
It's really troubling to me.
So let's debate. Has the sexual revolution failed?
Arguing in the affirmative, yes, the sexual revolution has failed. We have all the way from London, the author Louise Perry. Louise literally wrote the book on this subject. It's called The Case Against the Sexual Revolution. If you haven't read it, you have to pick it up. Welcome, Louise. Joining Louise on the pro side of the argument, I know she's got some fans in the house, is the singular Anna Khachiyan. As everyone here seems to know, Anna is a cultural critic, a writer, and the co-host of the podcast Red Scare, which, as one reviewer put it, has the unique ability to make everybody angry. Anna, welcome. And now, the opposing side of the argument. Here to argue that no, the sexual revolution has not failed is the great Sarah Haider. Yes, give it up for Sarah. Sarah is a Pakistani-born writer, speaker, and activist, best known for co-founding Ex-Muslims of North America. She currently writes on the Substack Hold That Thought. Please welcome Sarah Haider. And last but certainly not least, Grimes. Grimes is a singer, songwriter, and record producer with 5 studio albums under her belt. She was recently named by Time as one of the 100 most influential people in AI. Among my favorite things she has said is this: personally, I don't think Manic Pixie Dream Girl is an insult. I identify exactly with all of those terms. Grimes, otherwise known as Claire, and C, welcome.
Yeah, so one of the Red Scare girls and Louise Perry is this British, conservative writer, I think it would be fair to say. I actually got a little bit more insight into that after the debate. But arguing about the sexual revolution with Louise Perry, right, is the person that's mentioned, with Sarah Haider and Grimes, because why not?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess I'm glad it's all women.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, entirely female panel there. So, this is like, I've mentioned this on the show before, but I keep thinking, thinking about that lineup, right? I kept thinking about the year before when I did that debate in New York with Tim Pool, James O'Keefe, and Tulsi Gabbard, and which is, summer of 2022 is long enough that theoretically, the organizers thought, I had this whole argument with them about it, that it's like, say Tulsi, she's like, she's like a lefty, right? So so it was balanced, I'd suggested Sam Cedar, but for various reasons, I actually talked about it in the Majority Report. You can look that up. We replayed that clip. That didn't happen, but in any case, I remember when I was telling my editor at Jacobin, Megan, about this before it happened. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be in New York this weekend. Here's what I'm doing. She told me it sounded like I was describing a dream I'd had. It's like, oh yeah, the Tulsi Gabbard was also there for some reason. And this is very much the sense I get describing this. Oh yeah, so I went to see this debate. The Red Scare girls, Grimes. But in any case, there is a we do have another montage of some of what each of those four people said in the debate, just to give you some sense of what the actual substance was, because it is going to set up the interaction with Dasha.
That you have the radicalism of the 1960s encouraging a rejection of tradition, a rejection of religion, a rejection of all the bourgeois sexual norms of the past.
It never mattered how women felt about sex. This is why it's so hard to accept the logic that's shared by many in the anti-sex revolution camp, that the sexual revolution has been bad for women's ability to say no to sex. They're just being pressured to say yes all the time to hookups that they don't want. But it couldn't possibly be the case that sex is more coercive. Now we have to think about, what can that be compared to exactly? The storied past, where our great-grandmothers were having countless orgasms with no coercion whatsoever?
Nor can I claim, as my partner has, that the failure of the sexual revolution comes down to the fact that what originally started out with the goal of liberating women now mainly serves to benefit men. Realistically, men really only had a few decades of enjoying the fruits of the pill before Title IX and Me Too made male sexuality presumptively illegal.
Okay, I'm not good at reading or public speaking, and that was really good. Sounds stressful. Tonight, I argue that the sexual revolution will be successful. A revolution is a bomb, and violence cannot be a success in and of itself, because violence is a means to an end. But the sexual revolution is incomplete and therefore much nearer to success than failure. Revolutions historically fail when their violent nature becomes their identity, but they succeed when an improved culture is rebuilt in their wake.
Yeah, so that gives you a flavor of what all four of those people were like. Essentially, Louise Perry, who's the first speaker, and Sarah Haider, who's the second, both of them came prepared for like a real debate. That they had. I mean, Louise Perry wrote a book about it. Sarah Haider had this like very organized, clear counter argument you saw some of there. And then, Red Scare Anna was just, she was making barbs, roasting the panel a bit. It was basically a lot like listening to an episode of Red Scare. And Grimes was, you could choose to find it irritating or you could choose to find it adorable. I sort of went back and forth, but Grimes spent a lot of time apologizing about being bad at public speaking. And, it was a little bit of a mess, but that's the, that's what that experience was like, sitting there in that theater watching that thing.
I'm just glad that, she didn't say like, I'm bad at public speaking, now drop that beat and then sing her response.
I mean, it would have been much more entertaining. So,
yes.
Just like if she'd just done that every time it was her turn. But yeah, I mean, so basically, like Sarah Haider, who I'm sure I have lots of other political disagreements with, she seems at least, vaguely IDW adjacent as far as from what very little I know about her, which is almost nothing, right? But if you're just judging by what she said at the debate, and I'm sure we'll do an actual debate breakdown of this someday, but if you're just judging by what she said at the debate, like I agreed with pretty much everything she said at the debate, right? Like I think everything she said, like that point that you just got a little snippet of, and another you're going to see in a minute, I think is true as far as it goes. My basic critique, I was talking to Anna and Waz about, as we were like leaving the thing itself before Waz and I went to the after party. Where the conversation is going to happen is that, I think everything Sarah Haider said is true as far as it goes, but like she and everybody else sort of conducted the debate in this way that kind of pretended that economics didn't exist. And that like all of this was just playing out at the level of culture and there are no material conditions that are shaping it. So that would be my critique. But I want to play just the bit that's going to be most relevant, and then we'll go back to Red Scare.
I do want to talk about, a person who I think gets overlooked in this conversation, and I know we're going back to the time before the sexual revolution because that's actually what we're debating right now, but we talk about single mothers and their existence today. There are more of them, it's true. Prior to the sexual revolution, between the post-war period and the sexual revolution, there were fewer single mothers than there are now, but there were far, far many more children who were being put up for adoption by mothers who wanted to keep them. This was called the baby scoop era, and I think that it really, you guys should go home and look it up maybe, because it was a horrifying time. The rates of American babies that were being put up for adoption were extremely high. There was a peak of it that was like, 89,000 or something, and then it declined. It declined fast the second women were able to get an ounce of freedom, an ounce of understanding and acceptance. There were literally tens of thousands or more babies in the arms of their biological mothers who wanted them because the stigma got better. Anyway, I think while we're considering trade-offs, I think we should think about this one.
Okay,
too.
well, let's talk a little bit. Grimes, do you want to jump in, or can I?
Well, either way, up to you guys.
Go.
I guess what I would say is, again, we keep talking about symptoms, and if you want to get back to the root cause, it's the schools are fucked. People are not educated. People don't even understand their own fertility. They don't understand how to not get pregnant. They don't understand what to do if they do get pregnant. Kids have bad outcomes because kids are not literate. Kids are graduating from grade 9. We are in a massive literacy crisis. It's that's not the parents' fault. That's our system is fundamentally failing, and it's fundamentally failing children first. And even just at the airport, why is the mom always how does the whole line not move for the moms to go to the front? I just our culture doesn't make it easy to have kids, and so it's we're single mothers, it's not doing well. It's no, the whole culture should fucking move. Children are sacred. We won't live as a species if we don't have more kids, and we're personally not a replacement rate.
Let's talk a little bit about, picking up, Sarah, on what you said about trade-offs, because I think maybe the weakest part of this side's this side's argument, not the audience, we love you, is compared to what, right? I was editing a piece today about Mahsa Amini, the young Iranian woman who you guys will remember her name, killed by the morality police in Tehran under the Islamic Republic for the sin of showing her hair, right? That is what it is to live in a country that doesn't have this kind of freedom. How do you contend with that, right? How do you argue, if we look at other countries that haven't had a sexual revolution, sure, they don't have OnlyFans, they don't have Pornhub, they don't have people catching feelings, but they have cultures in which to be a woman showing your hair could be something punishable by death. How do you contend with that?
I mean, I don't think that we are arguing that we should go back to that. And I don't think that we never even really had we're not trying to execute women for attempting to obtain an abortion or having extramarital sex. We're just talking about, Grimes points out that we live in a society that's uniquely unfriendly toward mothers and children, which I think is true and correct. Part of the reason that it is that way is due to the sexual revolution. That's something we can blame the sexual revolution for. Because young women who grew up not knowing what to rebel against have a frankly anti-natalist and contemptuous attitude toward the sanctity of the family. It doesn't occur to them. They simply don't have the receptors to understand what it means to love somebody else more than yourself and to sacrifice yourself for them. And that is because, as Louise said, this was primarily a technological revolution first that introduced contraception and then abortion on an industrial scale and decoupled sex from procreation. I don't know that I want to go back to recoupling sex and procreation strictly. That's not for me to decide. But there has to be, again, some middle ground.
Okay, so it's that last comment, right, that sets up this interaction, that this sort of saying, okay, the reason why birth rates, for example, are low in the United States, according to Anna Khachiyan, is that we live in a anti-natalist culture. That's the problem. It's the culture. It's the culture that did it. And so when I, at the after party, I ran into her co-host Dasha, and we, as I said, had a perfectly friendly conversation. But she asked me what I thought about the debate. I brought that up and took issue with it, and then here's her description of the conversation after that.
Because he was at the after party and said that because you made a remark about us living in a basically like an anti-natalist culture.
Yeah.
And he was saying, he was taking this very like Marxoid kind of argument that we aren't in an anti-natalist culture. It's the people don't have the means.
They keep saying that, these leftists,
of reproduction. Yeah. And it's but I think that that's clearly not true.
I mean, I actually believe her that she and her boyfriend have like shitty low-paying jobs, and like
many such cases, but many like poor countries that don't have anti-natalist sentiments because they're Catholic have tons of kids and are poor as shit.
All right, and I just wanted to because she did just air this on Red Scare. I did just want to say a few words in defense of my Marxoid argument that that people are that people's family planning decisions have something to do with economics, and sort of the main thing that I would say about this is that we don't actually have to speculate about what people's reasons are for making the family planning decisions they do, because there are polls. We could just ask them and they'll tell us. And so this is something that I wrote about a couple times, several months before the debate. So this was at like the tail end of 2022. I wrote 2 articles, one for Jacobin, one for the Daily Beast, that made versions of this point, right? So one of them was called Ben Shapiro is talking nonsense about the left undermining families. So you can see the deck there. It says Ben Shapiro absurdly says the left supports gay marriage to undermine families and turn us into, quote, atomized individuals, unquote. The reality, left is supposed social atomization. We want families to have the economic support that they need. And the other one for the Daily Beast is called Jordan Peterson's Politics, Make Life Harder for Young Men. And the deck is the right-wing self-help guru wants to help disaffected males, but he advocates for policies and politicians that prevent them from getting married and having kids. And since it's the Daily Beast, they also do that little, I don't even know what you call that little extra little bit of text that's diagonal across the top. In this case says no lobsters for the unemployed, which is good. I don't know who writes those, but they do good work. But in any case, the point I make in both is, again, we don't have to speculate. So in the Ben Shapiro one, I think I looked up this is from the New York Times. Here is a poll. Why young adults are having fewer children than their ideal number. So this is for people who said that they had or expected to have fewer children than they considered ideal. here's the share that cited each of the following reasons as a factor. These don't add up to, these add up to many more than 100. You're allowed to pick more than one. But by far, the most common reason cited by people who have had, fewer children than they would like to is childcare is too expensive at 64%. Right? Next up is want more time for the children that I have, which I would point out is not unrelated to economic concerns. We'll get into that in a second. Next is worried about the economy. Next is can't afford more children. Next is waited because of financial instability. Next is wanted more leisure time. So again, let's think about how that relates in a second. Next is not enough paid family leave. Next is no family leave. And then worried about global instability, struggle with work-life balance. And it goes on, but I just read off the top 10, I think, about on this list. And I would point out that that out of these top several, again, I think that was about 9 or 10 that I just read, the only ones that are economic on their face are want more time with the children I have, want more leisure time. Yeah, that's it, right? And I would point out that this is not unrelated to not enough to struggle with work-life balance, right? If that, if you are working all the time, right? This is not unrelated to not enough time for the children I have, or what more leisure time, right? These are related. And, you can argue, of course, that, basically the argument that Dasha does make in that clip, and we actually ended up arguing about this for a pretty long time, right? That was pretty long discussion. Yeah, there was I'm not going to try to do a Dasha Nekrasova imitation, because it's, it's just not going to come off well if I try to do that. But there was a point where this little lilt to her voice, she asked me, "Do you think I'm a fascist?" I was like, no, I don't think that. I think you're wrong. Right? And then we just kind of got, more into it. But in any case, you could make the argument that she did, in person and in the Red Scare segment, that, well, what counts as being cash strapped, or working too much, or not having enough savings in the United States in the 21st century is not necessarily what counts at other times or other places, right? And that's fine, that's true, right? No denying that. But I also don't really think it's relevant. It's yes, of course, that's just a general fact about human history, that what people, as go really Marxoid, the forces of production develop, whether it's the capacity of a society to fulfill people's material needs to produce stuff, as that develops over time, as class struggle helps determine, how much of what's produced stays with working class people, and how much is extracted by the owners of the means of production. As all of those things happen, yeah, of course, what counts as a decent standard of living is going to be highly historically, geographically variable, no question. But what of it, right? It's yes, it is nevertheless a fact that what counts in the 21st, the United States, the 21st century, as below a reasonable standard, below what people would consider, economic security, etc., is what it is. People aren't comparing themselves to Guatemalan peasant farmers, right? People are comparing themselves to, say, their own parents at the same age, right? So, you can just wish that, people in the first world in the 21st century, expected less, and all I can say is good luck with that, right? Or or you could acknowledge that they're not going to, and that they're going to have the economic standards that they have. And in fact, it is just a fact about the last several decades of American history, and certainly not just American, that there has been neoliberalism, the rise of a more precarious kind of relationship that most people, that an increasing number of people have with the economy in various ways, a decline in the kind of social democratic activism of the state, certainly decline in the power of organized labor, and all of these things have effects on people's lives. And if you ask people, right, why aren't you having as many children as you would like to, or there's similar polls that I looked at for this, for like people who aren't married who'd like to be, etc. All, in that top 10 or whatever it was, right, every single one, right, is either partially or directly and obviously economic. And I'll acknowledge that some of this is just a values question, that as she has drifted right in the years since she was a guest on this show, Dasha, I suppose, I don't know that I totally understand her worldview now, but there seems to be this like conservative Catholic element to it. And so, I guess she thinks that, well, if people really valued the right things, then they would just suck it up no matter what. But one, again, I don't think that's particularly realistic. And two, of course, I'm not, I'm a whatever, godless, heathen leftist. I don't really care about which life decisions people are making, right? I just want them to have the support to, make the ones that they want, as long as they're not hurting anybody. And, and so, I think people should have as many or as few children as they want to have. But this is a pretty damn widespread human desire, and a decent society would make it much easier for people. And it seems to me, I mean, I know it's not as fun, it's not culture war red meat, but it seems to me that if you want to have a serious conversation about this, you just can't do it without the economics.
Absolutely. As a parent myself, just the financial stress of having a child and trying to support them and giving them what they need is a lot. And it's more than just, giving them food and letting them have nice things. It's a lot more than just that, and that's all. And I'm assuming that the ladies from Red Scare don't have kids.
Anna does. Dasha does not.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Anna has a kid, and it's relatively recent, unless I'm mistaken. But and I also think, and I also think that Anna and Dasha, should she ever decide to have kids, or probably let's put it this way, I don't think they're going to notice whether or not I'm on their Patreon. That's I think they're going to be okay, right? And that's not a dig, right? It's not a bad thing, to be successful at what you're doing, but it is maybe a reality check about this, that that there are there are a lot more parents who are in your position than Anna Khachiyan's in the country, right? And as a whole, and it is expensive in many ways, right? Of course it is, right? It's I mean, this is we don't even have free healthcare in this country, right? Your kid gets sick, you have to pay money, right? we don't have free college, if they go to college, right? You have to either you have to either pay for it, or sort of see them go into to debt and, like whatever. It's there are, children have, again, I suppose if you're going to say, well, hey, if you could just kind of reproduce the, like, yeah, if you're going to raise your kids the material level of 12th century English peasants or something, then, then maybe it's not that expensive, but, that's not what anybody in the first world in the 21st century wants to do. And if you're interested in figuring out what their motivations are, it's really not that, some bizarre psychological event happened where, human beings decided to stop wanting to reproduce, right? It's, it is much, much more that, lots of people who would like kids feel like they can't afford them, or, even if they have a kid, right, they're not going to have two kids, or, et cetera, right? For all those reasons. I mean, not everybody, right? Of course, right? We're talking about statistical trends. But if you're trying to figure out, what changed from like that video that the debate organizers put out, that like fun little video to start with, right, where everything's going on in that video is going on at the level of culture, and they start out with these like, cheesy like 1950s homemaker images, and it's like, look, what changed between the first images and the OnlyFans or whatever we're doing by the end of that video, I don't even remember, right? Is not just that cultural mores changed. Of course, that's a thing that's changed, right? But also in those earlier videos, we're in an economy where a high school graduate with a single income could support a family, including the homemaker in that video, right? Like that's the fundamental thing that changed, right? Which, by the way, right, I don't think anybody, I agree with everything Sarah Haider said in the debate as far as it goes. I think that the cultural mores of the 1950s were awful, right? And I would have zero desire to go back to them, right? And certainly was much more, coercion and gender relations and all of that stuff, which is terrible. But also, like, look, I think wanting to stay home with your kids is fine. I mean, I don't think there should be any gender-based pressures for anybody to do it, right? But if one parent wants to do that, or both parents want to work part-time so they can both spend more time with their kids, whatever, right? Like, I think that's something a decent society should facilitate. And you can ritually say the word family over and over again, and you could deplore anti-natalist culture, until you're blue in the face, but you're not going to have actually addressed the reasons for the trends. You need to you need to engage with stuff that might be a lot more boring, like 64% of people who haven't had as many kids as they'd like to say, list childcare being too expensive as the reasons, right? So it's like, maybe that's less fun than the stuff that was being, discussed in this debate. But, free childcare, which, by the way, is something I think the left should talk way more about. I'm all in favor of free college, but I think it's a telling problem that we spend so much less time talking about free childcare than free college. That is the kind of sort of mundane social democratic thing that would actually help with that. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.